Good evening and welcome everyone to this episode of Inside the Dojo, Unreal Experiences. I'm your host, Jesse Segal, and it is indeed a pleasure today to have all of you join us as we explore the frontiers of real-time animation and virtual production. Today, I am really excited to be joined by two distinguished professionals whose expertise in Unreal animation workflows is widely respected across the industry. We have Gabriel Paiva Harwat, who is an Epic Games first hatch Unreal Authorized instructor with over a decade of experience using Unreal Engine in live productions, as well as a long-standing mentor for the Unreal Engine Fellowship, where he has guided hundreds of creators through advanced real-time cinematic techniques. And believe it or not, he was my mentor when I did the Unreal Engine Animation Fellowship. Alongside him, we have Franco, a gold Unreal Engine authorized instructor as well, with an extremely strong background in real-time animation and virtual production, with roots in Argentina's VFX industry and more than 10 years of experience as well. Franco specializes in asset ingestion, character animation, and real-time workflows for linear content creation. His instructional work is highly regarded for its clarity, depth, and direct application to real-world pipelines. Together, Gabriel and Franco will be taking us through the journey of foundational principles of Unreal Engine's animation frameworks, showcasing both the technical strategies and creative applications that empower storytellers to bring characters and worlds to life in real-time virtual production. So please join me in welcoming Gabriel Pavia Harwat and Franco Vilanova to Inside the Dojo. Thank you so much, Franco and Gabriel. It's amazing to see you and for you to join us in this episode of Inside the Dojo Unreal Experiences.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello,
Pleasure to be
Franco.
here.
So
Right.
today we have an amazing set of learning and behind the scenes of how real-time virtual production actually works. So tell us a little bit. I've obviously, like myself, others want to know who Gabriel and Franco are. So please.
Sure thing. I mean, as an educator, from time to time, you get, the opportunity of, actually feeling yourself in the shoes of other people, right? And it's something that should be a must for every educator. And a few days ago, I actually crossed a path with someone who was telling me that the first time that he knew about Unreal Engine, he actually brought in his very dear scene that he was working in Houdini inside the engine, and he was like totally disappointed. He was actually saying that it didn't perform well and it did look awful, and very soon he actually quit. He said that maybe this is not for me, maybe this, is very different. And I was pretty enlightened by what he said. And I, acknowledge again, right? Because we all started at that point that, yeah, the engine is pretty weird. The engine is not straightforward. And if I had to describe it at any rate, it is like at some point there were two twins and they grew up in different, upbringings, right? One of them is the actual, normal cinematics industry and movies and special effects and all that. And the other one were games. And even so, they would have a little bit of inspiration between each other. They were completely different in the way of what they produce and how they actually do things. So in terms of having these two actually merging over, right? Because we can say that with late for the Unreal Engine for the 25, 26, like half of the world already started using Unreal Engine as an ICVFX tool, right? Real-time background replacement and all that. And, even though they would normally say that Unreal Engine was not, 100% ready in terms of the graphics, and they would not actually use everything that Unreal Engine could actually provide in terms of, like they would always bake lights. To this day, they are still, baking all the lights. They don't trust lumen in the LED stage and stuff like that. You can actually see how, we are kind of merged, but at the same time, we see a bit of Unreal Engine or Epic Games like saying bye-bye again, because they want to keep on their journey, doing games, saying like, yeah, it's been fun. We actually provide you with very good, provide the cinematic industry with very good tools, but we want to keep this path. Maybe soon enough, in the future, we're going to rejoin again. And maybe movies and games are going to be the same thing, right? Because the quality is going to be so good at that point that, who cares if it's interactive or you're just sit back, actually watching a movie, right?
Cool.
So in those terms, I wanted to actually go through just a little bit about what is weird and what could people actually find out weird about animation inside Unreal Engine.
All right.
So in those terms, let's actually start about, right? So I want to bring something that is down to earth and that we can all follow along if needed. So it's good if I actually share my screen like this. Does it look fine? It's good. All right, very good. So this is it. Oh my God, my camera did something weird. Yeah. Let me just fix this.
See it.
Yeah, give me just a second. There we go. Maybe I'm too zoomed in. All right, that feels a little bit better. Sorry about that. What about you tracking me? Am I good? Yeah, am I good? Right. So, very good. So this is it. Normally, if you're in any other DCC, you're gonna find out that you're gonna have like a character, right? And you're gonna start animating from scratch, right there inside the DCC. Either Blender, Maya, whatever. You're gonna have to actually produce some sort of rig so you can start, creating animations, because you don't want to go like fully forward kinematics, right, on your animations. So in the case of Unreal Engine, it's only up to a recent point where we actually have those tools inside the engine, like Control Rig, and the fact that we can actually produce and edit animations while inside the engine. For the longest time, we would, actually use things like mocap and animations that were done outside of the engine and then brought into the engine, right? So the first thing that I want to do right now, if you want to follow along, so this is what is called? The Dungeon Modular V1. This is for free right now, I believe. So if you want to go right now to Fab and get it, it is, pretty game-like, but I think that for today it's going to actually do the trick, right? So the first thing that I would say that you might want to find is Mannequin, right? Because that is the quintessential Unreal Engine character. And it's really important in terms of what it represents, because it's like the template. Something that is completely missing from any other DCC is that Unreal Engine actually have like an official mascot, right? An official character that has skeleton with a particular hierarchy and all the different animations that you want to sell, right? For, Unreal Engine users are based into that particular character. So that is a huge plus in terms of, compatibility and, ease of use at any rate. So the first thing that I would say is, jump into Fab. So let's open up our content browser and let's go to Fab. And hopefully I'm logged in. I'm logged in. That is always a good thing. And we're going to search here for the Mannequin. And let's hit enter. There we go. So the one that I would recommend for you to actually get, because it's the cleanest one for your project, is actually getting these Mannequin asset pack. This is a trick that actually Franco taught me. Like I was always using the one from the game template, but this is a lot cleaner, and it actually does, the same thing. Now, granted, we are right now using 5.6, and this one, if we actually go in, you're going to see that this the actual support is up to 5.5. I actually tested a little bit, and I think it's working fine. So with any luck, we're not going to be having too many issues while using 5.6 and a 5.5, mannequin
Gabriel, did
content.
you just say you are showing us Unreal Engine 5.6 fresh out of the oven?
It is. Yeah, we're risking for the biscuit today.
Well, there
I
you
don't know.
go,
It would be
folks.
weird, right, to actually have like the launch yesterday and actually do like a performance today with, the old stuff. People are going to say like, yeah, you're so 5.5, right? No, we're already, at the tip of the sphere. So
We are
this is
back
it.
in Unreal Engine Fellowship.
Oh yeah, fellowship style. I remember that on our second fellowship, everybody was like, yeah, no new stuff this time. Let's stick with what we already know. And Epic actually launched MetaHuman like 2 days before the fellowship. And we were like, no, why? And it was like, yeah, we need to provide support for this thing now. It was hell to pay, but it was really fun. And people actually, made a really good use of MetaHuman that first time. We were like completely in awe of what people did with the first MetaHumans.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. We have here our mannequin. Let's actually close this one and open it down here. Here we go. So let's go meshes. And let's start talking about what we see right here, right? So what we see here is the normal animation framework inside Unreal Engine. So all the characters are going to be in 2 parts, right? At least. And there are many other, different assets that will support what a character is inside Unreal Engine. But mostly, the actual core of this relationship is going to be an actual skeletal mesh, a skeleton asset and a skeletal mesh, right? So this is exactly what we see here. Now, right out of the box, we can see that this is pretty different of what we're going to find in any other DCC. And that is that we have only one skeletal mesh asset and we have a couple of skeletal meshes, right? And this is exactly one of the first things that you're going to find out about Unreal Engine is that Unreal Engine actually loves to assetify everything. Everything is an asset. And the more than you can reuse, the more Unreal Engine is going to feel happy. You could, by any means, actually have like one character, one skeleton, one character, one skeleton, right? But that wouldn't be so much optimal. So Unreal Engine loves, to actually have this way of working. Where these, go ahead.
Can I request your camera screen
sure.
to be on the right side because we can't see the.
There we go.
Yes, that's wonderful.
All right. So that's going to be fine.
Okay.
All right. So, and you can see that already these 4 characters are actually using the same skeleton. And, we're not going today about actually ingesting characters, meshes, animations into the engine. We're going to be using, what we already have, and we're going to be importing some characters, and we're going to be importing some animations. Maybe we can actually plan like something like that for the next time. This time I want to take it, really easy. I just want to explain a little bit about how these actually works, right? Because very soon you're going to find out that even though these characters looks kind of the same, they're really not. We have 2 different characters, really, just a Manny and a Queen, right? So we have the male character, the female character, and we have another one that is called Simple. We can address this one for sure later on before we start animating with them, right? So let's actually grab our simples, both, and let's put them inside our scene right here. And let's actually take a fast glance about what they are and how they look. So here it is. We have both our characters into our scene, and we can already see that there are a bit of difference between these 2 characters. One of the characters is going to be a little bit taller, and the other one is going to be a little bit smaller. So they don't have the exact same proportions, right? And am I crazy? They are looking pretty the same. This is weird. I thought that Queen was a little bit or a lot smaller. It's just a bit smaller nowadays. Maybe they change it. Who knows? All right. So the fact is that they're not exactly the same character, right? But if we actually take a look at the skeleton, there are actually, both characters are using the same skeleton. So how could that, be a thing? Well, in the process of actually getting these characters into the engine, they were both, imported into the engine, selecting the same skeleton as the source. So for that to work it's just a thing of having the same skeleton, right? So having the same number of bones and having the same hierarchy and having the same names, right? Mostly. There are a few rules where you can have a couple more bones if needed, but they should not be in between of the actual hierarchy, and they could be like leaf bones, like the ones that you can add bones at the end of a chain, right? But they should not be in the middle of a chain, because then it's going to be like two separate skeletons, and that way it's not going to work, right? So that being said, let's actually open up the skeleton, right? And check out some things about what is this editor. So this editor, at least it used to be called the persona editor. We're going to call it the skeletal mesh, or the skeleton editor. So this one looks a little bit complex, right, in terms of everything that it actually offers. But one of the things that you should be aware is that this is like one editor for a few other things, right? So this is the editor where you're going to be able to edit and see how your skeleton looks, how your character looks, what animations are attached to that skeleton, and something that is mostly for gameplay, which is called the animation blueprint, all right? And we're going to see it right now in a few. Come on, Unreal. There we go. So you can see that this is like all in one. There is one more. This is the actual physics assets. Let me just show you how that looks. And that is what a physics asset actually does, all right? So let's go back to our skeleton and let's check it out. If you want to actually see the shape, the actual shape of this set of bones, the brick of bones, you need to, oh my God, it changes a lot. So
It's now
here,
under the little eye. Yeah. Characters.
yeah, now bones and now
bones.
all hierarchy. Look at that. All right, now I'm getting used to this new stuff up here. All right, so this is how the actual simple skeleton looks. And you're going to see that it is just, the normal hierarchy of bones that you're going to find everywhere, right? But right now is actually assigned to the queen character, right? And this is how we are actually checking it out, because on the right side, you can see that there is an actual preview settings, and you have the actual preview mesh as the queen. Now, we can actually display this, and you can see that the 4 characters that are assigned to the same skeleton are here for you to actually preview, right? So what if we change it for the Manisimple, right? You can see that right there, something happened. And the first thing is that the actual skeletal mesh changes, right? Now it's the male character, but also the shoulders are a little bit broader, and he is a little bit taller. So the actual, shape of the skeleton and the base pose of the skeleton actually change. So we can actually say that each and every one of these characters have a different skeleton, right? But with the same name, with the same amount of bones in the hierarchy and everything like that, right? So you can actually see it right there. Well, the other thing that we can actually check is something a little bit more complex. What if I actually change the simple queen for the, let's call it the complex queen, or the queen, right? As soon as we hit there, a few things are going to happen. Let's wait a little bit, and very soon some magic is going to happen. And now you can see that the actual character kind of looks the same, but we have tons more bones, right? So you can see that this is something that you're not going to come about in any other DCC at all, right? So this is a very complex system that is being handled by Unreal Engine that, any other DCC will give an arm and an eye to actually have something as complex as this. So we have like one skeleton that is actually 4 different skeletons, right? Because they change a little bit, and they will actually conform to other shapes, right? But it's as simple as this. Only one skeleton and 4 characters. So this is an amazing thing that Unreal Engine provides. And it's very, hard at the beginning to actually understand, how this works, right? So for you who maybe are actually asking, like, why have like a simple version and a complex version? Well, my advice is if you're going to be animating in the engine, use the simple one always. Don't use the complex one. The complex one is just to receive the animations, right? Not to actually edit them or to create them with the complex one, right? So the complex one is like this, is specifically for these. Like these will have a couple of conforming bones where, depending on the actual animations, you can see that they are going to be growing in a particular way that the actual volume of the mesh is going to be conserved, right? You can see that even the biceps grow a little bit. And when you actually go the other way, the tricep is going to contract a little bit to actually produce a little bit more volume, right, in these parts. So that is here everywhere. You're going to find it in the legs for the buttocks, right? So as soon as you start, pulling these up, you can see that there are a couple of other bones that are actually holding the volume, right, of the shape. So the shape doesn't collapse upon itself because you're actually producing like a very extreme movement in the bones. This is another thing that is really, really clever that Unreal Engine provides right there out of the box for you to actually use. You don't need to actually be, managing these in any way. This is there and it just works, right?
Gabriel,
Go ahead.
The simple mannequin skeleton, is that similar to the UE4 skeleton that majority of artists and creators are quite used to and easier to animate with, whereas, as you mentioned, the advanced skeleton, which we are looking at right now, this is actually translating the performance capture data coming through Xsense or OptiTrack, Vicon, Rococo, and so forth, and applying the data to the skeleton. Is that correct?
Yeah. What I meant about not using this one in particular to apply like the contour rig and to start, animating and creating animations with it is because if you bake the animations on the complex one, then you're going to have like a double transformation because you're going to be baking the position and how these little bones are actually altering the shape. And this actual movement is actually governed by an actual contour rig. So let me just show you. If you go back one step to mannequins, if you go to rigs, you can see that these characters have a couple of contour rigs applied to them. We're going to go to contour rigs really soon. But so this one that is called the CR mannequin procedural, this contour rig is the one who is actually in the editor and in real time actually producing those little changes, right? So the thing is that if you use this one to actually bake into, contour rig or to create an actual animation sequence with these bones, then you're going to have a double transformation because they're going to be baked with the adjustment, right, of the volume, and then the procedural is going to keep trying to adjust it, and you're going to get like pointy, like too thick elbows or pointy elbows. So my advice is for everything that you're going to be performing, until you go to render or go to gameplay, it should be the simple one, and just save this one to actually apply animations to it. All right, that would be my recommendation. So that's why there are so many of these. Well, there are only two versions: the simple one, from which one to actually author your animations, and the mani normal, right, the complex one, where you want to apply those animations. All right. So talking about applying animations, let's actually take a look at the animations that these characters come with, and talk a little bit about, a few differences that you're going to also find in these particular character. So if we jump here, where we have this icon with a character running, well, this is the animation editor, right, within the persona editor, right? And you can see that this character is already receiving some sort of falling animation, right? Down here, you can see all the different animations. If you double click on those, you're going to see them, applied to the character and how they look. Now, this is another thing that you're going to find a little bit, incredible. For example, you're going to find out that there are a couple of male and female versions of animations, but there are a few that are common. For example, the idol. Oh no, the idol have to maybe the falling one and the landing one and the jump one are common, right? You can actually see it from the actual names. We have a female version for the idol, and it's just because it's a little bit more of a female pose, right? More relaxed, less aggressive, with shoulders a little bit more back and stuff. The actual running, it's also a little bit more, female in terms of the actual movements. The male one is just a little bit different, but you're going to find out that you can actually assign male animations to the female character and otherwise. And that is because Unreal Engine have this internal way of retargeting those animations. At the same time as the same skeleton can drive, a couple of different skeletal meshes, it can also reapply, those differences into the animations depending on the actual skeleton and the character for that skeleton that is being used, right? The version, right? And all that, it's also handled by Unreal Engine. You don't need to manage any of that. It's going to simply know what to do, right? And it's great. It's great because it will actually free you from, doing a bunch of different retargeting, right? That you don't need to. Now you have only one skeleton, and every other animation that you can add to this character is going to be added without any issues, without not having issues with the actual footing, and it's not going to be sliding and everything. Now, one thing that you're going to find out is that more times than not, you're going to find out these kind of animations. These animations are called in-place animation, right? And they are very different from other types of animations where the actual root of the character is actually changed in time, right? And that is what is called a root motion animation. So normally in games, you actually have like a capsule. You're going to have like an actual blueprint that will react to the inputs of your keyboard, right? And when you move forward, that capsule is going to move forward. It's going to, turn to the sides and do all that stuff, right? And then you need to have these, which is this is a glorified version of a state machine. And that is what is called the animation blueprint. And what this will do is actually get those inputs from the character and know, well, are we going forward? Well, we should be, engaged in this animation. Are we turning right? Are we turning left? Are we looking up? Are we looking down? This is the one that actually engage and mix, and blends all the different animations, right? So this is very into gaming, so don't follow too much into this one. Just actually letting you know how this actually works. All right, so let's actually put this character to the paces. Let's actually add some movement to them and see how that works. So
I mean, one thing, Gabriel, personally, when I got started in Unreal Engine and I was invited to take part in the instructor examinations originally, what I found was the fact that I was coming from cinematography and I was inside a game engine and, having worked in Maya previously with keyframe animations and so forth, that is where the biggest learning curve for me happened, right? Yeah. And what I found is a lot of people coming to Unreal for the first time get over inundated by looking at what they are seeing and as a game engine. But would you be able to just speak a little bit about the fact that yes, these are game characters and the game state machines and everything, but at the end of the day, they operate like a actual actor would when we animate them, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So all of these looks like very packed and close in terms of, well, this is what the engine offers you, right? And it works this way and you cannot change it. Well, since Unreal Engine 4.16, we have a beautiful tool that is called the sequencer. And now that we have the sequencer, Now we can actually create, a mix and author, different combinations of those animations, and we can make them our own. And we can start creating our own, cinematics performances, and we can create our own, little shorts with just a couple of those animations. So even though there are, actually made for gameplay, they perform like really, really well once we start, adding animations to them. So let's do exactly that. Let's actually right click. I'm gonna be doing that. Go
Can I
ahead.
jump with a little question? When you mentioned we can apply male animation to female character and vice versa, I know what we were doing with our mockup data. It was obvious when you would put the male performer onto female character, the way the body moves. It's male dynamic motion is different from females. Did you say that by applying this would kind of adjust to female type of motion or no?
Yeah. Well, not. It won't change the actual motion. The thing is that it will apply well, even though it's not applied to the exact same proportion that it was created from. That is a huge deal when we're talking about inter-exchanging animations. Mostly when you were working in any other DCC, that was a little bit of a hell to pay, because you're going to have like a character in real life, right? And an actual actor that will suit on, right? And start, collecting all those performances. And the thing is that you normally are not going to be applying all those performances to a character that has the same proportions. As soon as you start changing those proportions, the lengths of the arms, now you're going to see that all those angles start, multiplying upon itself, right? Because now they are a little bit shorter. And what a tall person do this, a smaller person will do that, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have issues with the position of the hands. If you want to have contacts, the position of the feet are going to start, sliding and doing weird stuff. Well, that's the kind of thing that Unreal Engine help us once we start, working with it like a game animation, right? Like a game performance. And it's cool because we can use what Unreal Engine provides in that regard, but at the same time, later on, disengage from that. So I can get it to work upon the time where I have like one skeleton for a couple of characters, and they will all share the same animations, and they will all share the same performances. And I don't have to deal with actually, small adjustment here and there because someone is a little bit taller and another one is a little bit smaller, right? And that is a great thing. That is actually using that synergy that video game engine will provide you. And now we can actually disengage. We can say, well, up to this point, it's great. Now I want to, start using it to create a movie, right? And that is exactly what we can actually perform here. Let's actually open up a new level sequencer. Let's call it shot one. Why not? That is going to be more than good. Let's open up the sequencer. Let's save it, and let's add our queen symbol, right? So I'm going to drag it from the outliner into my sequencer, and a bunch of stuff is going to happen at the same time, which is a little bit awful at first. Later on, you're going to learn how to you can actually prevent this from happening. So many things happen at the same time. We actually get our queen into our sequencer. We get an animation slot created for us, an animation track. We get an actual contour brick, created for our character. And also we have like a transform track, which is normal for anything skeletal mesh or static mesh, right? So, and to boot, we have our animation mode loaded also. So it may be like too much, right? For what we want right now. We want to start testing those animations and see how they look into my characters and all that. So let's actually get rid of the contour brick. So we select the track and we delete it. And let's go up here and go back to our selection mode. Now that we don't have an actual contour brick, we can safely, click on our characters and move it around. And that animation mode is not coming back. So, if you want to go back by hand, you can actually go up here on the selection mode, and you can actually assign the animation mode. And you can, get out of it also if you want to. So this is it. We have our character. We can move it around. We can actually go through in-depth sequencer class if you want to. So far, just try to follow along, and it's going to be, simple enough to actually follow. This can get really complex really soon, the sequencer. It's another of those places where it kind of looks like a non-linear editor that you can find in any other DCC. And in fact, Epic Games wants it to be as relatable, right, as possible. So you don't feel like in an alien, planet instead of, your normal DCC like Maya. So let's actually start using it as you would use it inside Unreal Engine. So right now we have our Queen actor track, and we have an animation track, and we have a transform track. So the transform track is there to actually record, right, the position of our character or the character that happens to be in this track at any point only while the sequencer is on. This is like an alternative universe to what, this level says that these actor should be, right? That is, in a few words, what the sequencer does. It's an alter ego of our scene, right? So right now I'm going to be adding a new animation to our character. So let's actually click here on animation, and all the animations are assigned, right, to this skeleton, because this is important. The skeleton is the core of your character, right? You only can have one skeleton, but that skeleton can have a bunch of other skeletal meshes assigned to it and a bunch of other animations assigned to it. But the actual core of what an actual character inside Unreal Engine is the actual skeleton, right? So that's why we have these, many animations on it. Most of them are animations that are used in the proceduralistic deforming of the bones when you actually, like flex an arm, right? So that's why we have like all of these different animations. The ones that we're really after are things like walking, right? So let's actually do the run animation. So there it is. And let's actually use the female run animation. And that's it. We actually have a mannequin running in the middle of these catacombs, right? So here it is. You have the character trying to run, but it cannot, right? Simply because it is expecting you to actually add it to a character blueprint, right? And have a capsule that is going to be moving her around. In this case, we are obviating all that. That is for games. We want to do cinematics with this, right? So what we need to do now is let's actually start moving this character around. So now she's going to be back there, right? Let's actually hide her a little bit back there. And at the end of this run, she should be a little bit forward, right? So let's actually add a key on the transform, and let's move forward in time. And now let's move her, to the other side of this hallway, and let's add another key at the end. So that's it. We have an actual mannequin running, right? Who knows at which speed she is running right now, because we're simply dropping keys like crazy. So let's actually take a look at how fast this character is actually running. Oh, she is like the devil, right? She's like on a bike. All right, so let's give her a little bit more time, right? So I'm going to be grabbing this end key and moving it forward in time. And now let's check that speed again to see if it's like human speed. It may be. You can see that the animation is short. So we can actually, this is a loop animation. So we can grab it by the ear and extend it, right, to infinity. And now we can actually see her run. All right, it's not that bad. Now we can actually, if we take a look at the feet, we can see that they are sliding a bit. So what this means is the actual running animation is faster than the amount of distance that she's covering. So you can do two things. You can actually make her run a shorter space, or you can actually have her get there in few shorter, right? So now you can see that the actual foot placement is not that bad. Maybe a little bit shorter. Not that bad. Just a tad shorter. 90 is going to be my last offer. That's it. We have an actual good foot placement there. And she looks like if she was a character, right? And we don't need to actually play with her and actually made a character run on these plays, but it's actually working. Now, I can, set the length of my animation to be, these far down. I can actually put these there. And now with the handles, I can make her run, at any point in time. And that's it. I can hit play and we're going to have a character running by. Just, that's it. And now you can see that I'm using everything that Unreal Engine provides for a game, and I'm using it in a cinematic way. We have a character running by. Maybe she's going to be chased, right? So let's actually show you something incredible about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be duplicating this queen track that is right here, right? So I'm going to be saving the sequencer, and I'm going to hit Control D. And now we should have two queens, right, running. And what I want is one of them to actually pass by like a little bit earlier, right? And right here, I'm going to grab my second one and move her until she's right on her tails, right? Right up her heels. And that's it. We have now two metahumans running, right? But we might not want this character to be a queen. We want this one to be the Manny, right? So let's actually do that. On sequencer, a track is a track, and no matter what, give me just a second. So what I'm going to do here is actually save before everything. I want to reassign this queen simple 2 to my Manny right there, right? So because a track is a track, I can simply right-click on this character, and I'm going to go up here where it says Assign Actor, and I'm going to search for Manny, and here it is. I'm going to assign Manny as the character who is running behind Queen. And because they actually share everything about them, but the actual skeletal mesh, it is just as simple as that. And now you have a new character that is using the same animation, right? And it works. Now you have a female character being chased by a male character, just, as in life. It happens in the movies, it happens in life. Well, let's also say, well, you know what? Now that we have our Manny here, we might want him to use his own animation, right? And we have the female animation here. Well, let's actually right-click on that. Let's go to Properties. Let's go to Animation. And we're going to change it for the MF. Am I right? MF? MM? They're both the same, maybe? Well, I'm going to say that this is the... Oh, no, this is the walk. I'm completely crazy. Sorry about that. There should be two runs. Maybe call run. There it is. The MM, that's the one that I was after. And now let's take a look. Now, because the male animation might be he have a bit of a longer legs, you can see that the calculations for the speed and everything for this character are not great. Like we can actually see that he is sleeping a little bit, but to the other side. So in this case, what you might want to do is actually grab the animation and make it a little bit slower. And right here, we have a play rate somewhere. Where is the play rate?
They changed the name, Gabe. It's no longer
Playback?
play rate.
Playback.
It's called play rate right there. Fixed play right on top of your mouse. A bit higher. A bit higher, a bit higher. It says fixed play. Yeah, they didn't change the name, but they gave us something new. Yeah, we can do a sign now, a curve. It's very strange.
Oh, that's not bad. That is actually great because we actually had a lot of issues where these animations want, you want the character to start moving, slowly and then faster, right? This was always an issue. This is very good. I didn't know about this one. I've been a little bit disconnected from the animation side of Unreal Engine since we are running the ICVFX course for Seneca and all that stuff. So let me actually check back our character. What is he doing? Is he too fast? No, he is too slow. You can see that he is lagging behind the actual, traverse distance and speed. So I need to accelerate the animation just a tad. So let's go here. Let's try 1.1 and let's see how that looks. And now I think it was too much. So I'm going to settle at half that. So let's go playback and let's go here, 1.05. And I think that is going to be fine. Yep, that's it. Now we have a good solid foot in the ground. And that's it. We have those of two characters, chasing, right, at the speed of light. That is what we wanted. So this is great. This is how you would use something that was originally made for games, and you can actually push something cinematic with them. Now, let's say that we don't want, these two characters. We want, actual proper characters, because what are two androids? What are they? Are they people on mask and very weird, S&M kind of, rubber body, suits? However they are, let's actually bring something that looks a little bit more like our catacombs here. I'm going to be saving this sequencer, right? And I'm going to close it. And they're going to be back into, what they were doing, like standing like scarecrows right there. Let's actually go to Fab. And we're going to go to my library. And we're going to search for the knight. The knight. And hit enter, of course. So here we go. We're going to be choosing the plus. So what that would do is actually apply it to the project, right? The good thing about doing this with the plus is that it is not going to be left in your vault, which is great. Which means that you're going to have only one fresh copy of it in this project and nowhere else in your hard drives of your computer, which is fine, right? That is what we would expect. If you do it through the launcher, then you're going to get like a copy, like an extra copy on the vault. So that's it. Let's actually take a look at these. Let's go meshes, and we should have let's use the VA, and let's test him right here. That's it. We have an actual, medieval character, and this is going to be fun. Now what we want in these 7 minutes is for this character to be chasing another character, right? I want to reuse everything that I just did with these two characters, but instead doing with two proper, armored characters. So the thing is that let's take a look at where this character is. So it's right here. It does have its own skeleton, and it does have its own, whole sets of skeletal meshes. And if we open it up, we might find out that he doesn't have any animations at all. Like it just have like one pose where he does this, but this is not going to help us too much, right? To do something cinematic with it. So now we have a character, but we have another set of characters with some animations, and they are already running and doing all that stuff. Well, how to actually make them work together? Well, let's go to our skeleton, and this is where all the magic happens. We know because there are actually advertised as they are. So if you actually take a look at those two characters, the knights, is it going to find it? No, it's not that intelligent. The knights. There we go. So if you actually open it up, it's going to say that they are actually based on the UE4. UE mannequin. It doesn't say UE4, but it's for the actual mannequin. So they should, in theory, have the same number of bones and with any lock, the same standing pose, right? Or initial pose. So let's actually show you the big secret. So this thing right here, where it says, right now we are in the skeleton tab of the persona editor. And you have these asset details, right? Well, you might not have it here. If it's not here, you might want to go to Windows and you want to open up the asset details. I don't know if it was on by default in this version. So they may already address this because, again, if you go to any other tab, you actually have an asset detail or not. It used to. All right. It's all right. So in this actual asset detail, you have a skeleton tab. And if you open these, oh, am I not in the skeleton? Oh, sorry, it's not here. It's up here. Compatible skeletons. This is what we want. So these compatibilization of the skeletons assume that they are, the actual kind of the same skeleton. So they should have the same amount of bones, at least on the base chain. And they have, the same names, right, to the whole hierarchy. That is granted because we know that, allegedly they are working for the UE4 character. So let's try. So what we need to do is add a new compatible skeleton, and we're going to be searching for our mannequin. So let's go to Manny. And here it is. We have an SK mannequin. This is the skeleton of the mannequins, right? The one that we brought in before, the ones that are running right now in the hall, right? So let's actually do that. Now there are set as compatible skeletons. And the order in which you do this is you don't compatibilize everything inside like a scrambled eggs. No, you want the actual character that wants to take advantages of other skeleton animations to be compatible with those, right? The one that doesn't have the animation should be the one where you are actually setting the compatibility, right? And that's it. Let's save this Gothic skeleton. And now let's test that theory. So if we actually create, and this is going to be just a test, right? So let's call these the test sequencer, and let's open it up. Let's drop our Gothic Knight in, and let's go to the animation. You can see that if I search for run, we're going to have the MF and the MM run forward animation. And this is it. Now, you can see that there is something amiss. There is something weird, right? And that might be because this character is severely taller than the normal character. Let's, in fact, address that. So how tall are you? Not that tall, but maybe there is a bit of a difference in the number of
less
spine
bones
or something.
Yeah, less spine bones on the UE4 rather than the UE5. So that's why it's getting chopped. You need to retarget at this point.
That is exactly what we're going to try. We're going to try to use the internal retargeting. And if not, this is going to be like a retargeting issue. So let's actually hit Control E to open these the skeleton again. And what we're going to do is we're going to be jumping into the skeleton options. And right here, very hidden, there are these settings where we're going to be actually opening up the retargeting options. And this is a far cry to see if we can actually make it work without retargeting. But let's see. So the thing here is that by default, all the bones are set to be animation. And animation means that they're going to be changing everything about what the animation says. So translation, rotation, and scale. So that's why you're going to see that he might look weird when you apply an animation that is for a shorter character, because it's going to be actually moving the bones up to the position of the other bones, right? So in this case, let's see if we just, change. We're going to right click here and we're going to recursively set translation. Yeah, this one. So now it's on skeleton. So what skeleton means is that it's just going to apply rotation to all the, deltas of the animation, right? But we don't want that for the root, neither the pelvis. So just the root and the pelvis are going to be animation scaled, and the pelvis is going to be animation scaled. Let's see if with any luck, we can save this one. Let's click there. Let's close there. And look at that. It's not that bad. So now we have a character that is running. Now, can we actually be very enough? Now we know that it works. So let's see. Let's actually add another character, another one without a helmet, right? So that is going to be you, my dude. Let's put you
Gabriel,
here.
I do have a question about that, and
Sure, go ahead.
it's around the fact that yes, the fan marketplace is, it's just starting to grow with so much stuff coming in from Sketchfab and other places as well. However, if there are artists who are still creating the characters in Maya or in Blender or bringing them out of Character Creator or any other such places or DAZ 3D, can this method that you just showed of adjusting the animation and skeleton recursive targeting, would that work with the Unreal Engine skeleton compatibility?
All right. So that is a fair question, and that is because there is a safety, and that is if you actually get those animations from the marketplace, those are for sure. I'm gonna say it very bravely. I think that 100% of all the animations that you can find in the marketplace in Fab are compatible with the UE4 or UE5 mannequin, and I think that is a bit of a requirement. If there are not, we are talking about an actual character that holds all the animations onto it. And so even if it's not compatible, it's going to have all their own animations that they work with. So you're going to find out a couple of characters or monsters inside the Fab that are quadrupeds, or there are like Kraken, or there are like, other type of monsters and stuff. They would have their own animations, and you're not going to be able to mix it, with a mannequin character. Well, that same separation between a Kraken and a Manny is going to happen if you brought your character from any other source that is not the Fab marketplace. Because then at that point, they're not related. You're not going to have the same or a compatible skeletons from which you can actually do this. Like, trying to fool, the actual skeleton into believing that all those animations are his, right? In that case, any other character created with any other skeleton standard is not going to be compatible with the mannequin, at least not right out of the gate. Unreal Engine provides a full set, very professional and very easy to use nowadays, of a retargeting tool where you can do retargeting for days on. You can actually make compatible anything. I don't think that there is something that you cannot make compatible with enough work. Unreal Engine nowadays provides a couple of already, pre-made. They are called rigs, but it's going to be weird if I call them rigs. There are retargeting rigs from which you can nowadays do retargeting for Mixamo characters and from other characters that are really related, to or very famous, right? So I would say, even though you are creating them outside the engine and very far, in terms of Houdini, Maya, or whatever other way of creating characters, you can bring them to the engine and you can make them compatible through a more complex way that is a full retargeting of the skeletons.
Brilliant.
All right, so let's go. I'm kind of out of time, so let's do this fast. Hopefully it will work. Let's go mannequins. Let's go meshes. Oh no, it's on sequencer. Yes. Let's open our two running characters. All right. Now, what would happen if I grab this character and I would right-click on this track and say, "Give me a night." Cooking? No. It's a canite. Yeah. And yeah, you're going to be in the front, and you, my lord, are going to be in the back. Canite. There we go. And lo and behold, we have two knights chasing them around in the same dungeon endlessly without being able to, embrace each other. I don't know. I'm out of gas at this point.
Do we have cave physics?
Yeah, it does. Should I simulate, right?
Yes, let's go. Let's see if it
Let's
crashes.
go.
There we go. I think
don't know
At least
where
I
they
don't
are.
even think we can see them. No.
Are they? Are they there?
I love the
Oh,
Batman
there
theme,
they are.
Batman and Robin.
Somehow.
They are, but they're not being dragged behind them, and there's obviously collision issues on the
Yeah.
character itself.
Yeah. It's the actual physics asset might be bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. All right. So on my side, that was my demo. Hopefully you kind of, I wanted to take it to ground, right? A little bit of those difference between what you might expect of Unreal Engine should be as an animation hub and what actually Unreal Engine is as an animation hub.
This was amazing, and every time I speak with you and Franco and see your work, it takes me straight down to the grassroots, and it's a great refresher because we've been in the industry for as long as we all have been, and as authorized instructors, we are playing with new versions all the time and learning and relearning. At times, these grassroots are what tend to catch us out, even in production work. So understanding the epic way, so to speak, and having it so that we don't overcomplicate how we are animating. As long as we understand the principles of animations, this works brilliantly. So thank you so much for actually going down to the grassroots and showcasing. And I mean, this looks great. I'm already starting to cook a story about these two knights running in the dungeon. So watch the space.
Yeah.
We might be coming out soon.
This is like the calice, and I don't know why they cannot see it. I don't know. It's kind of a Monty Python situation right now.
I was just thinking about that. This is brilliant.
All right.
So-
So that was my showcase. So thank you so much.
Amazing. And if there are any questions from our viewers, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel, and I think we can continue with Franco.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and Jesse and medieval style knights and swords, that's just a damn scale.
You can see behind me
Perfect.
briefly some of my sword collection as well,
Oh,
right there.
yeah. Yeah, look at that. There are
For
tons of
legal
swords there.
disclaimers, I have to blur them out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So do we want to take a quick 5-minute breather break, or
Yeah,
Franco?
let's do that.
Do we want to jump straight in?
Let's take 5. Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll
Sure.
all be back in 5 minutes then. Thank you so much.
All right.
And we are back. And I can't wait to see the amazing stuff that you're going to show us, Franco.
All right, my turn. I do not have permissions to share my screen.
You do not have permission? How come?
I do not. My button is grayed out.
Fine.
There we go. I can share my screen now. So let's go screen 1. Hopefully it looks okay. And guys, okay, thumbs up. So what we just saw with Gabe is essentially how Unreal runs animation on what we call a skeletal mesh. That means geometry that's being moved and modified by something called bones, which is essentially the same we have within our actual bodies in the real world. We have bones. Our brain tells a whole bunch of things around our body to move around, and then our skin, air quotes, moves, right? It's the muscles, not the bones, but you get the idea. In Unreal, it's much more direct. We tell the bones to rotate, move, or do whatever they need to do for us to get movement or animation, and then those bones drive what we call the skeletal mesh. So right now in the screen, we have a very simple animation with a push-in of a camera, and then we have Manny wearing, in this case, a set of clothes from one of the asset packs from Fab. And he's just simply doing a loop animation of an idle animation. Now, in here, we have not only character animation. This shot has camera animation with a very, very slow push in. And we do animation here in Unreal by just simply telling Unreal when, what, and how much. That's a keyframe. A keyframe is what and when. In this case, we're telling Unreal, hey, the transform, which is location, rotation, and scale, usually only use rotation and location for cameras, is at 0 frame, I need my camera to be in this position. And we can actually jump out of the camera itself, and we can see it just flying around the scene. If I can find it, it's in the ground because we do have a very high aperture on it, so we are pushing in super deep. So the camera is at this point in time right there in the floor, and then it's up to that point. So essentially a keyframe is that we are telling any actor, any given actor in sequencer, hey, be here or be this or behave like this at this point in time. And then further down the line, if we scroll down here in sequencer, we can see there's another keyframe here telling now the camera, hey, at this point, you should be here. And in the case of a camera, we get the effect of a very soft push in. There's also something called interpolation in animation in keyframes. And if you come from any other DCC, you know what interpolation is. But essentially, if you've never heard this word, is how will the software interpret what is the way that the camera is going to reach point B from point A? How is that transition going to be? And interpolation can be very directly expressed in 3 main ones, which are going to be cubic interpolation, linear, and constant interpolation. Whereas cubic is soft movement at the beginning, then a constant speed, and then deceleration. Linear is constant, starts and stops abruptly. And then constant information is just hold your information until you switch. And I did that for the focus distance instead of the location rotation. That's why we weren't making any difference. So essentially a constant is hold information until I tell you to change. So just a couple of key things that we need to understand to get the feeling of what animation means. This applies for everything, not just for Unreal Engine, but Unreal Engine goes a bit deeper and runs some things called animation sequences. Now, Gabe was running animation sequences on his example, and he was actually right-clicking on the animation sequences and going a bit deeper into the properties. He was particularly changing what we call the play rate to make that sequence faster or slower, and that the keyframes are going to be stretched or compressed within the animation sequence. Because if we see this animation sequence right now, and I was just speaking about keyframes, and Franco, you told me, hey, there's keyframes telling the bones to be moving from A to B. I don't see any keyframes here. Well, that's because Unreal behaves this way. If we're animating with animation sequences, it packs all that information within one single track, which is called an animation sequence. But the magic with Unreal Engine comes in the ability of going back to keyframes and then going forwards to a new animation sequence. So let's say I have this character here, which is standing on an idle position, and then he's just looking almost straight forward, almost to the camera, right? But let's say we do have this animation, and then the people we send this animation, that request of this animation, they were the mocap people, and they completely forgot that the character actually needs to be looking down, and then in the middle of the shot, they look up and they look towards the camera or forwards. Or maybe they're looking at the beginning of the shot, they're looking to the left, and then as the camera punches in, they look towards the camera, right? And that's the magic that we can make happen within Unreal. We don't need to call those people and say, hey, I need you to re-record all of this. We can access something called a control rig in a character, and through that, start controlling that character. So I will teach now, or I will show at least, the old way of doing this. Back in the day, back prior to Unreal Engine 5.4, so 5.3 and below, we have to do something called baking to a control rig. So what we would do at that point is, by selecting our skeletal mesh here in Sequencer, we would right-click on it, go to bake to control rig, and obviously we would need to have a control rig for any given character that we want to do this to. A control rig is a set of essentially symbols or gizmos that are around bones that make our life easier to control said bones. It'll be easier for me to show it. So if I were to bake to control rig, we're going to set everything by default, which is fine. This is what now Unreal offers me. Unreal is now telling me, hey, this is now, if we take a look down here, being baked to a bajillion keyframes. So now we do have access of what I was saying before. Hey, so what is this left arm, or in this case, upper arm left, doing? And if we scroll down, we can see the rotation values as I scroll in, rotating and changing in time. So what a bake to control rig does is it exposes all that information for me to come in and either fix or modify. Now, in situations in where we have things like, for example, let's say that this character has a lot of, let's make something that's super, super obvious. Let's say there's a lot of wobbling in the head as he's doing the animation, and I can't have that at all. So if I need to delete all of that, I come in here with all the exposed keyframes, and I just simply delete them. And that means that now that head, that bone, that control is completely stiff. It's only moving because it's part of a skeleton structure, and the rest is moving, and the head is just coming along. But there's no extra this in the animation itself, right? It's completely stiff. If I do Control-Z now, you'll see that there is a lot more of nuance in that animation. You see that there's some tilting to left and right, etc. So if you wanted to modify something like this, instead of deleting because everything was fine, but you need the character to be looking left or right, back in the old days, what we would need to do was create a separate track for our control rig, which is called an additive track. And what an additive track would do is add on top of pre-existing. It would add any keyframe modification that we do on top of the pre-existing animation. So in this case, we said that we wanted that character to be looking down at the beginning of the shot. So we're going to keyframe with the S key, and we're going to say the character is looking down, and then we're going to hold that down position. So copy paste in the keyframe because we want to hold that position, that information up to this point. And then let's say he's going to be softly lifting his head and looking mostly towards the camera or something like that. We're going to check timing by hitting the space bar, and that's very slow, and that's good. So we did an additive track on top of a bajillion keyframes because we didn't need to modify any of that. Let's look through the camera, and we can press G to make those controls invisibility disappear. They're not gone forever. They're just invisibility gone. So he's looking down, and spot on, right? It's actually looking up at the point at which the camera is slowing down, and that's perfect. So this, again, this was the old way. As we did this, we then needed to export this animation again, very, very old-fashioned, very chuggy for Unreal. You can imagine this is one keyframe per frame. There's 210 frames, and there's 297 bones on a mani. Make that math. So it's a bajillion keyframes, and this is making Unreal chug. Not much. The engine is very powerful, but it's looking at a whole bunch of keyframes, and it's calculating instead of looking just as an animation sequence. The new way, and the best ever way of doing things now, as we need to reactivate the animation sequence because baking to control rig makes it so it takes precedence and it takes over. So we need to reactivate that. The new way is something we got in 5.4 called a layered control rig. And the word here is kind of giving away the surprise, right? It's going to layer on top of the pre-existing animation, and it's going to let us modify in an additive way, thus not needing to bake anything up. So the process is, instead of baking, we're going to go to the plus track icon on top of our skeletal mesh, and we're going to find control rig. But the main thing we need to be wary of is turning on layered. So as I turn on layered, and then I go and hunt down my CR mannequin body control rig, we see that there's a new type of track here, which is essentially the same, different color, and it has the word layered in between parentheses. So right now, everything is locked away due to the G control key, which turns on or off anything that we shouldn't see in a render, or we will not see in a render. I'm going to turn it back on. And what the additive layered control rig does is essentially that. It's literally going to be adding on top. So let's say I have my character here, and I want him looking down at the beginning of the shot. Let's do something like this. And then in the middle of the shot, we're going to hold. And then when the camera is here, he should already be looking up, something like that. And we have snapping on. That's why the camera is doing that, not the camera, the control is doing something like that. In our new UI in Unreal Engine 5.6, all of these snapping options have been moved to the left, and all of the visibility options have been moved to the right. I've seen already 4 videos on people making editor utility widgets to move them around back to where they were, or going back to 5.5. I say embrace the new, out with the old. So I'm going to turn it off and just simply put the head where I want it to be. So now we have the same exact result we had before, but take a look at the amount of keyframes compared to baking the entire animation, 210 frames by 297 times because of the amount of bones. It's insane. Just 3 keyframes. There's one little caveat that we need to be mindful of when we're using control rig in a layered version. Layered means additive, completely additive. That means that if I were to, let's reset everything to the ground, and he is back. If I were to say, all right, so in the middle of the shot, I need him to be looking down. And then, sure, I'm going to keyframe this. And then at the end of the shot, he's going to be looking up, and that's it. Look at what happened before my first keyframe of him looking down. He's already looking down. And that is because, once again, the additive word is giving that away. It's going to step on everything if we set down a keyframe. Even more, if we do not set down any keyframes at all, but we decide to move that control, it's already taking it into consideration because we are moving a control on an additive layer. That means it will add on top of every other animation. The head control is being commanded, if we go up, by the animation sequence because it's no longer gone. It's no longer deactivated because this is a layered additive track. So how do we solve all this mambo jumbo I've been talking about? So this is my common animation, and I need him to hold the gaze where he is. I need to, what I like to call, protect the keyframes. I'm going to set down a keyframe by doing nothing. So essentially, when I say doing nothing on an additive layer, it means add 0, add nothing. So while I have this selected, I am protecting everything here up to, let's say, this point. Everything in here is now protected. If I go here and I go something ridiculous, it will go back to original 0 additive positions because it's being protected. We can even look at the values here. As I move, you can see how the values change dramatically. But as I am within my protected keyframes, the values go back to 0 because I am telling the engine, keep adding 0 until I tell you to do something ridiculous. So that's the only little small caveat I like to mention about the additive layer, that we need to keep it in mind. It is additive. We may go just nuts going keyframe, 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 and then at the end of the day, we're going, oh no, everything is now modified. I forgot to protect my information, and it sucks. So keep in mind, if we're going to be using additive layers, very, very important to make sure that you protect your keyframes. Now,
This is great, Franco, because one thing, even working with professionals, animators in studio environments, one thing that Maya and Unreal have a difference is, the protected keyframe, or as I like to call it, a control keyframe. So in Maya, this thing was never there, and that is where, when coming into Unreal, it's like, okay, hey, I can just add the keyframe and go from there. But it's cumulative, as you mentioned. It's adding on top of each other.
exactly.
And the layered control rig, or even the baked control rig, is always going to take the priority as user generated over an imported animation sequence or a mocap sequence and
Exactly.
so on, right?
Exactly. So it's a great tool for animation authoring. It's a great tool for animation modifications, for variations. I could have this exact idle animation with several positions of the body in just a couple of degrees of alteration on the spine, on the arms, on the head, and I would make from one idle animation 10 more. And then I could just modify the play rate of that animation, make them faster, make them slower, and I get more and more and more variation. From one idle animation, I can get 15 out of here. Now,
so you're saying productions do not have to bring the performer back for pickup mocap shoots anymore.
Yeah.
So if the actor was doing the idol, and then the director, let's say Gabriel is the director, and he says, Franco, no, I need my actor looking down and then look up. We don't have to waste $5,000 a day to spark up the mocap stage anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, and we don't have to pay for it, and we don't have to go back to it. We don't have to call them and say, hey, you did this wrong. And the cool thing about this is that the nuances of the body motions of the actor will be kept alive because, again, this is additive. It works on top. It's not replacing information.
It's not
it works on top. It's super powerful. Now, Maya could do this with what we called animation layers back in the day. You could turn them on and off. It's not the same exact thing that Unreal does, but it's ish in there. Unreal in Unreal Engine 5.5 got animation layers. I hate them. I don't think they are useful at any point or whatsoever, because we have this creature of the void here that can do whatever else animation layers do. We can rename this. We can call it whatever we want. I don't think we need animation layers, but animators may want them. And another cool thing that we can do with animation sequences here in animation in the sequencer in Unreal Engine is, once we did our modification here, we just said, hey, I wanted to export this into a different animation, right? We usually never want to leave keyframes on a sequencer that's going to go out as a render. It's a good practice not to keep keyframes. 3 keyframes is not going to kill your render. If you bake the entire thing, probably going to kill your render, or it's going to make it slower or give you some artifacts. We also don't want to leave keyframes up for Unreal to grab during render time just to figure out that interpolation. We want everything baked out on an animation sequence. It's cleaner, it's easier for us to view, and it's easier for us to control. But as we go and right-click on our skeletal mesh here and go for bake animation sequence, we are now prompted with the capacity or the ability to go out of our assets and go, all right, rename this to mm_idle look up. I think he's looking down on this one. So look down. So as I'm exporting this, we can see Unreal prompts here a message. And if I quickly open it, we can see that now my new animation has, or should have, there we go, has that new change that we added on top of it. Now, what I would say to my students is, all right, so now you can get rid of your animation layer, and you can just simply come in here, properties, and find your new animation, look down. So if we replace everything correctly, it's the same thing, right? Now, anyone that's an animator would say, well, how do I go back? I want my 3 keyframes back. And I would have to say, well, we're out of luck. We can't go back to those 3 keyframes. I could offer you an entire bake of the entire thing, and we're going back to 210 times 297. And the animator is going to sit there and look at me going, are you're it's a joke, right? So Unreal does have a solution for it. It's not super straightforward, but it does have a solution. So let's go back to this. And The solution is this little guy here called create a linked animation sequence, which instead of baking an animation sequence, what it does is it creates a linked animation sequence. So let's do it very quick here. Go to assets once again, and we're going to call this one mm_idle look down linked. As I export, Unreal will give me the same prompt here, and we'll see that we have the exact same animation. He's looking down here. Now, the huge difference with this is that this guy, we see, I'm going to zoom in so we can very clearly see the difference. Right now is looking down, as I have him here also in this viewport. If I were to sit here on the last keyframe by clicking on it and then clicking on the head control and drastically change that, the minute I save that sequencer, Unreal automatically populates that linked animation sequence and changes live that information. So we held all of our keyframes. All of my authoring is here because I may not only have just the head movement. I may have this layer that's look down, and then I may have another layer here that is, I don't know, arm up. And then on this one, I have him saluting at the beginning of the shot because he's waving goodbye to someone. And then at the end of the shot, he just lowers his arm. I'm doing this very, very fast. It's going to look horrible, but bear with me. Terrible, absolute terrible animation. And then he looks, well, in this case, he's looking up now, like swearing or something, right? So I'm continuously adding layers to this, and as an animator that will stay working on this, and maybe the director comes back and goes, oh, no, you need to change this one keyframe. If you baked everything out, there's no going back. You'll need to bake everything into 210 frames per 297 bones. So it's nuts, right? So if we create this guy, our linked animation, again, I'm going to save again, and we're going to see the arm going up. Awesome, amazing animation. Once again, we have that linked directly to a new animation asset. The one thing that you do need to have, which I don't like, but it is what it is that this could no longer be my animation shot, because the idea for me is to hold this guy with this two-layer rigs in another sequencer, which is my workshop or my working sequencer, the one where I just tinker with the animation itself. Once I have the animation running, I would come into my actual shot. Let's actually do the thing instead of talk about it. Let's say this is now my workshop sequencer, because this is where I'm looking at Manny and I'm going, okay, maybe I have a mock-up of the camera. I obviously would want a mock-up of the camera if I'm animating. But I'm like, okay, sure, okay. This is working. And then my actual sequencer, if we go to content cinematics, and let's say we create by right-clicking anywhere in the empty cinematics level sequence, let's call this LS for level sequence. Always keep your nomenclature correct. And we're going to go shot 0101. Why am I doing 0101? Because Unreal has the ability to create something called takes, and takes need the last two numbers or the suffix to be a number, because it creates a take and it just essentially creates a duplicate and changes that last number. So it would be shot 0101, shot 0102, shot 0103, etc. So in this case, what I'm going to do is very quickly do a quick mock-up of that same camera angle that we had, something like this. We're going to punch in this guy because I love punching in the focal length. So we get that cool blurry background. And then we're simply going to bring in the focus distance, which is literally what it says in the name, focus distance. Another fun way of switching the focus distance, as we click on the camera, we can go back to focus settings down here, and we have something called the draw debug focus plane, which is this huge guy, which is going to turn purple, and we can run through the middle of where we want our shot to be focusing exactly in. And then we turn it off. It's not going to render if you turn it on, and if you leave it on, don't worry, you're going to notice that it's on. It's a huge purple block on your scene. So now that we have this here, I can go in and bring Manny once again into my shot, and then tell Manny to run the new linked animation sequence. So this one is the linked animation sequence in my actual shot. And if I would go out to my LS workshop Sure, workshop. We're going to call it workshop for now. And for whatever reason, Unreal is going to take 7 hours to change it a name. If I were to now come in back into my workshop and say, do something, another ridiculous thing, so we can quickly notice the difference. If we now go and put this arm up too and save, remember that this is linked. So if I were to now go back to my actual shot, we can see in the shot that the other arm is up because this is my linked animation sequence. So animation authoring in Unreal Engine, pretty straightforward. The control rig is actually pretty friendly. And it has two very big modes. We're going to maybe talk a little bit about it right now. But what we did here is animation alteration through sequencer, through the layer control rig, understanding what baking and not baking a control rig means, understanding what baking an animation sequence means, and understanding what an animation sequence is essentially everything cooked into one track that I have here that gives me different abilities, right? The play rate that Gabe was modifying on the first part of this, on the first half of this presentation, right? So extremely powerful, pretty straightforward, and versatile and non-set in stone. Unreal Engine, as of right now, to my knowledge, has only one destructive process that I know of, and that are the modeling tools when you just chop off a polygon and it's gone forever. There's no going back. That's the only process at least to my knowledge, that is destructive. There's no turning back from it. Everything else is pretty back and forth. The engine is permissive, and it's continuously evolving. As of right now, we're running 5.6, and it's working like a charm, except metahumans. Those are very buggy still, but it's a new integration to the engine. Now we have metahumans within the engine, which is completely new, or at least metahuman creator within the engine. So that's all great. Now, what happens if we bring in Manny and just a control rig? And that's where things start getting a bit more tricky, because first, we would need to know what being an animator means. We would need to know interpolations. We would need to know what in-betweens mean. We would need to know what poses mean. We would need to have a general knowledge of what animating on an engine is, on any software, or hand drawing animation, right? It kind of translates. Now, Unreal Engine, in all their glory, has this lovely creature called a control rig, which is a whole bunch of symbols around the bones that let us, as I've been doing, control, quite literally, it's in the name, what our character is doing. And from the get-go, we're seeing a behavior on the legs that is very akin to what an actual body in the real world would do. The legs are kind of sticking to the ground, air quotes. They're not really sticking to the grounds. I'm going to explain just one tiny thing about rigging in the 3D world. These legs actually are not sticking to the ground. What they are doing is they are sticking to the position in which they are. If I were to move this leg up, forwards, one of the things that happens is that the knee is actually behaving as an actual knee would, or as close as. But you'll see that if I now move the waist again, the feet are kind of anchored. And the key here is that expression, anchored, right? Now, there's a word for this. There's actually two words, because the arms do have the same capability. The arms would also be able to be anchored in that way, but they're currently not set up to do so. So let's actually switch between these, and the word here is switch, and between these. And which are these? These are two things called inverse kinematics and forward kinematics. And this is extremely important to understand for any animator at any capacity. If you're a beginner, if you're an intermediate, or if you're extremely advanced, you already know what these are. Inverse kinematics and forward kinematics are concepts that you need to completely understand, not dominate, but at least understand, to get a feeling of what every animation needs, if it needs IK, inverse kinematics, or FK, forward kinematics. Let's do an example with the arms. In this case, in Unreal Engine's 5 control rigs, or Unreal Engine 4 is the same thing. If we go to the global control, which is this super guy here at the bottom, it does have something on their animation details, which are called attributes. And in between those attributes, we do have the switches. And as I use the word switch, when we switch, and it says here very clearly, arm left, L for left, FK, IK, switch. that means that it'll switch between forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. In Unreal Engine, at least, the circles are forward kinematics. What does forward kinematics mean before we go into the other one? It means that if the parent is moving, the forward kinematic control will follow. It will go forward, air quotes. Forward is just the word they use. But it's not necessarily going forwards. It might go up, down, left, right, rotate, whatever, right? The idea here is that it will be translated, right? It moves. Now, see what happens if I go into, again, my global control here in the control rig and switch the left one for FK, which stands for IK, which stands for inverse kinematics. And as I move now the waist, we'll see that the left hand will try its best, and it's actually doing it, to stick where it is. Meaning it needs an inverse force, again, air quotes, to be moved because it needs that independent force. It will not follow a parent. If we reach the extremes, the control needs to tug on the arm, so the arm doesn't stretch, obviously, and it breaks the geometry, and it looks terrible. So if we reach the extremes of the control, it will tug on it, but it will tug in a way that we see that the arm is being stretched as any human arm would. If we do a change on this one, for example, and we could even, if we wanted to, go a bit nuclear here. And one of the many things that we need to understand as we're doing animation is the difference between world space and local space. As of right now, my goal is to tug this arm this way, from the center of the little gizmo or the control upwards and in the same direction, right? Why is my up this way? My up in the gizmo is this way. My z-axis is this way because it's in actual world space. And we want something called local space. We want the up axis of the control and not of the world. And this is something that we're constantly going to be changing as we animate. So the bottom here is being moved. So it's right here, world space coordinates. If we click on it, you can see how instantly my axis here switches. It was not the z-axis, the one I wanted. It was just the x-axis. But see what happens. I can stretch this one. Unreal does have capabilities of stretching or non-stretching. But what I'm trying to get at here is that as the left hand, which is for inverse kinematics, tugs as a human arm would, the right one is just going, okay, you can go nuts with me. I can do whatever. I can stretch, I can turn, I can rotate. I will just follow my parent as much as you want me to do so, because there are ways of changing that too. But the left one is kind of trying to behave more human-like. Now, big caveat here. This doesn't mean that every single animation that we do needs to be inverse kinematics, because obviously I want super photorealistic animation. A walk cycle will not be inverse kinematics, because if you would have to animate that inverse kinematic move up and down every single time, and it's nuts. Whereas if you just bend the elbow, bend the wrist, and that's it, and then just simply animate the shoulder, the rest will follow. Whereas in an inverse kinematic situation, the hand will stay stuck, and if you animate the elbow, something like this will happen. So it destroys itself, right? So realism doesn't mean always inverse kinematics. Examples. Why would we want inverse kinematics instead of forward kinematics? And there's a very, very clear winner here. I am going to not do that. I am going to absolutely not do that. Never move characters from any of the bigger controls here. We don't never do that, because if you do this, the center pivot of the actual character is now all the way over here, and the pivot of the character in the rig is all the way over there. So if you want to move the entire character, move the entire character. Do not move the components of it, right? So what we're going to do is grab the entire blueprint of Manny, and we're going to move it over. And we're going to make a very obvious example of when we may want something like forwards, or in this case, when we may want something like inverse kinematics. Some of you may already figure out what we want here. Let's actually reset the 0. So if we're here, we're sitting here, and we're having this animation running. Let's say I want him to have this hand on the wall, and let's say he's peeking around the corner or something like that, right? So we're going to just do that. We're not going to go super deep into it because I don't want to spend too much on animation refining, even though we could. I'm just trying to make a point here. So let's say his hand is there, and we spent probably 3.5 hours trying to get the hand to sit on the wall perfectly, right? And then we're going, okay, now we need him to be breathing a little bit. We need to animate that body a little bit. So we grab the waist, and then we push him in, and we're starting to notice already a problem. And we're like, oh no, we went for forward kinematics on the hand, and the hand is now not stuck to the wall, which is a problem. So in this particular example, we 100% we want to FK the left hand so it follows the waist, but the right hand needs to be stuck. The waist moves, the elbow moves as our own body in the real world would, as we are standing on a wall. We're stuck in the hand is on a wall, the rest of the body moves because we can't go through matter. This guy can go through matter, but we're trying to animate something that looks realistic, right? So we're trying to stop that. So at this point, we are free to go in and fix the hand a bit more. And let's say that now our animation of him leaning on the wall is perfect because he is actually leaning on the wall, on the wall. And the same would happen for us trying to push these. Well, that's the roll. We don't want to do that. Trying to push these feet and say, not inside the sand, a bit higher, and maybe something like this. And then we want him to crouch a bit more. So if we crouch now, he is perfectly stuck. And you can see how the hand is also stuck to the wall. Another example, if we have a steering wheel, we want both hands to be inverse kinematic and stuck to the steering wheel, because as the steering wheel moves, the elbow will move dynamically and organically following his control, his mother control, which in this case is the inverse kinematics. So this is going a bit deeper into the weeds of animation. I think that inverse kinematics, forward kinematics are key components of any kind of animation, and understanding them, you should, like spoke like Joe there for a second. But interpolation is also another key part of animation, understanding what keyframes are, what the idea is, understanding that Unreal is permissive. It's changing. It's not set in stone. You can bake out, you can bake in, you can set a sequencer apart to only have your keyframes in there and do linked animation sequences. It's extremely strong. And Unreal cannot just animate a character or just animate a camera. Unreal can animate a whole bunch of things. For example, an intensity on a light. So I'm going to put this light very jarring, right? We're going to do this very obvious. But let's say that he is holding this light right in front of him. By default, we're going to lower a bit on that information. Let's go to, let's say 2. Let's say there's a magical light in front of him for whatever reason. Now that light, I should say, always brings something into sequencer. If we want to animate it through sequencer, there are ways of animating things outside of sequencer, and I'll showcase one here in a second. But as of right now, we do have control to the light intensity, which is a number. It's just a number. So I could keyframe, go down the line, keyframe, go down the line, keyframe. And then what I could do, because we are in sequencer, and sequencer is what at which point in time, is go a bit deeper into animation and open something called the curve editor. Now, for anyone that's an animator that knows what the curve editor is, Unreal has the same thing. But in this case, I'm going to go really quick into this. And what we have here is a loop. And I want that light to be pulsing throughout the entire animation. Now, I don't want to copy paste the keyframe 17 million times. So Unreal, amongst the bazillion tools it has something called the post-infinity cycles. So if I started and I ended on the same value on the keyframe, I can turn on the post-infinity cycles here from the curves and go for cycle. And that means that infinitely it will cycle up until oblivion, right? So that means that now, even though there are no keyframes here, the behavior for them is to pulse. So now that information is pulsing. That's one way of doing that, and that's one way of animating outside of the box. We are animating a light here. We're not animating a character moving. This is not movement. Animating in Unreal Engine and in any software really is changing a property. In the case of characters, we're changing rotation and translation on bones that at the same time take away a geometry, and they are giving the geometry movement. In the case of a light bulb here, we are changing intensity. And Unreal, again, is really powerful. So in this case, I think, yes, we can. In some of the values that are numeric or float values here in Sequencer, we can replace that and get something called a float Perlin noise. So in this case, instead of me trying to mimic flickering on a light, which is not easy to mimic, I'm going to simply go and override it with a float Perlin noise, and now we get something like this. The value is changing in regards to a Perlin noise that I can right-click, go to Perlin noise channels, and understand a bit more of what that is doing. So for example, I could do amplitude, and it's going to make the value change more, and I can enhance the frequency to make the value change many times. So we get something like this, which is terrible for photosensitive people. But you get the idea, right? Extremely powerful. We can also animate colors. And the last thing I actually want to cover, because we are almost on time, there's things like this in the background moving in Unreal Engine. And this is not a skeletal mesh. This is not a character. This is not a skeletal mesh. This is not a light. But this guy is moving. And the strangest, most mind-blowing thing that Gabe told me around, I don't know, 10 years ago when we first saw things moving in Unreal that were not a character and that were not being moved by a keyframe, is like he told me, this is being moved by the material. And I could not believe him. And I told him, no, that's BS, right? Open it up. Show me. How is that possible? And it is possible. We're not going to talk about the technicality because I don't even understand it. But the gist of it is that materials in Unreal, hopefully this one updates and shows the effect. No, it won't. Okay, cute. Let me see.
They actually turn off real time on that viewport. You can turn it back on if you find it.
There it is. That's smart.
To know where it is.
It's smart. It's right here. So
right.
Real-time viewport turned off, so you don't get, again, you don't track information. We're not gonna go into the weeds of what a material is, but we know essentially a material is conformed of the color, the roughness, how metallic or non-metallic it is, if it is see-through or not, the basic things of a shader in any 3D world. But essentially, this creature here, the world partition offset, a position, not partition, two different concepts there. The world position offset is being run by all this mumbo-jumbo spaghetti of things, which is essentially math. But what a material does in a Unreal Engine through world position offset is check out where the world is and move this vertex in relation to the world, up, down, left, right, forwards, backwards, etc., etc., etc. All of that is in a very layman's term, what it does. But it's moving the vertices, it's moving the geometry of this mesh through the material. No bones, no skinning, no geometry, no skeletal meshes, I should say. Mind-blowing, right? Extremely powerful and great for things like this, where you don't really want to go and put a bone on every single leaf and just go insane trying to figure out how to animate this. And very also already created in the engine, there's wind material functions, which give you the ability to use them as a world partition offset generator to get this world position offset generator, to get this effect of wind, air quotes. Extremely, extremely powerful. So what I was going to go on this, and I'm going to finish up with this, is Unreal is great. It's extremely powerful, not just for simple animation, not just for reusability of animation, not just he's gone into this side now because by default I sent him there now. I should have him a little key from here, right there, and like that. We're gonna close with this lovely face here. Not just for character animation, not just for character authoring, character animation authoring. It continuously gives the engine. If you go in and crack it open, it's willing to give you more. It's a bit overwhelming, and what I continuously tell my students is it will try and eat you and eat your GPU in the process if it can, if you let it. And the worst thing is this little creature continuously evolves. It's not like you learn it one day and you sit down and you're like, all right, 4.27, we're done. That's it. This is how far Unreal is going to go. And then they come out and say, okay, this is Unreal Engine 5. Not 4.28, not 4.4. No, this is Unreal Engine 5. And it changed everything. Everything changed with Unreal Engine 5. And you needed, both Gabe and I needed to sit down and learn the entire thing again, because it pretty much changed everything, right? We got together and we're like, oh my God, Lumen, wait, infinite polygons? No, this is cheating. And we open a thing and then infinite polygons. It is there in front of you. And you're like, what? So keep up, continuously work with it, sit down an hour a day and just play around with it. I've been with the engine today with 5.6 for 4 hours. I understood 2 things and I crashed, I think, 37 times. It is what it is. It's a new piece of software. It's completely new, and it's also in a previous state. They are not saying, hey, go production with this. It's not their fault. They are testing it. We are testing it for them, really. And then we're going to tell them, hey, all of these bugs, fix them for release on Unreal Fest, please. But even though it's not a major release, if you're learning Unreal Engine, it continuously gives. The engine is a video game software that behaves as the jack of all trades. It can do marketing. It can do motion graphics now, extremely powerful motion graphics. And it for sure can do filmmaking. I've been teaching filmmaking for 5 or 6 years now. It's extremely powerful. It's extremely straightforward. People go and offline renderers and they have 1 frame, 77 minutes waiting for 1 frame. No, that's a thing from the past. This is the new era. This is Unreal Engine 5. Unreal Engine 6 is probably going to be mind-blowing. Hopefully it doesn't work by itself with AI and it lets us do the creative side of things. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little ramble of me in Unreal Engine's layer control rig and a bit of concepts about animation. This is my drill. I love animating in Unreal. I love how strong it is. I love how organic it is. I love how you can break it and fix it. Another thing I love to do, and I'll finish it with that, reverse engineer. If you find something that you like a lot, crack it open. Go in, take a look at the sequence, take a look at the material, take a look at the way the blueprint was made, the structure of the blueprint. Crack it open, make a copy, save the original so you don't destroy it, make a copy and crack it open and just enjoy it. I can't tell the amount of things I learned just by doing that. Cracking open the content examples map from Epic Games and just going in, hitting play and going, oh my God, how? And then I click on the thing and I start reading the details panel, go into the blueprints, go into the logic, go into the material, check the shader. What? How this? Okay, there's a mask here. Okay, that makes sense, right? And you start understanding. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening to my rambling. I could speak for 17 hours, but we don't have that. That's sort of.
It was amazing.
Yeah. This was just amazing, and especially when I personally found out about the layered control rigs. I remember I was talking with Chase and others, and it was shown, and it was like, wait, you're saying now that I can actually direct my actors the way I would on the set? Okay, shut the box. I'm out of here. Like this doesn't make sense anymore. But this is where, I mean, as educators. You're an educator, Franco's educator, Brigitte, I'm 30 plus years academic director, and me, as much as I'm an authorized instructor, same as you guys, there's always so much learning, and it's not about who is better or who is worse. As Franco mentioned, and as you mentioned, Gabriel, it's about diving deep inside, having that vision in your mind and actually starting to block things out. And then trying to polish it as natural progression of movement happens. And I'm talking character animation specifically in this instance, right? So this has been absolutely amazing, and hopefully, people in the industry, people in academia, they all can see that this is not a beast we need to be scared of. AI is not going to take over our life. The ability to design and create content still lies with us as creators. So this is amazing.
Yeah, if I can add, it wasn't the rumble. It's very much the same thoughts that we all have. The speed with which engine evolves is amazing, and it's scary for us because we are just thinking, will hardware follow? It's good excuse also to get better computers all the time. Yeah, it is actually amazing the speed with which they are developing it, and but it's getting more and more user friendly because things things that we couldn't do before, and we had to do it in so many steps. Now it's less and less steps. It's easier and easier. So I would expect more and more people to be in it because visualization is the flavor of the day, and not just day. I believe we are really in visual times. So yeah. Thank you so much for doing all this tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait for the advanced session, in all honesty, especially with how you can actually bring characters and match the weight painting and everything else. If anyone wants to find out how that is done, follow Gabriel and Franco's YouTube channels as well, and you're going to see some mind-blowing stuff. Trust me, I go there when I want to figure things which are brand new as well, because these two always beat me to it. So brilliant.